Embracing your body feels good.
And it's good for you.
This is a podcast for parents to help you help your kids.
To embrace their bodies so they can be who they are in a world that tells them otherwise.
This is the Embrace Your Body podcast with Taran B.
And Dr. Z.
We acknowledge that we are recording this podcast on the traditional country of the Ghana people, and we pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. For those of you who are listening to this podcast and can't see us, because we also did film it, because we like added pressure of like getting filmed too, right, Sally?
Mm-hmm.
No. Sally's T-shirt says, doing my okayest. And I love this T-shirt out of all the ones you've worn because I'm so sick of all the slogans that's like, life is great, life is wonderful, and I'm doing fab. Because sometimes for me, killing it is actually just doing okay.
Yeah, sometimes doing my best is like too much of a high bar. So let's just do okay, people. Today we're going to unpack one of the first of our 4 key messages, which is celebrating diversity. And this is all about pointing out, acknowledging and loving all of the things about us that are unique and different, and then kind of recognizing that that means we're all unique and different, and that's what makes the world awesome. And what I really love about this one is that it does come up in so many ways, and so you're just constantly pointing out diversity, and that's going to help our kids to improve their body image. So, isn't it amazing that all of our bodies can do different things? And, in a team situation, it might be like, well, this person's good at that, but you're good at this other thing. And so when you all come together, that makes a great team. Look at all the flowers. They're so beautiful when they all come together. It makes this great garden. And, then we move on to dogs as well.
We needed to include dogs in the film because dogs are just a great way of seeing all different shapes and sizes and abilities. And it was only when we got down there, let me tell you, when I say this film tried to take my soul, I think it was this dog day of filming 20 dogs on a beach. The poor cinematographer, I had to go up to him at one stage and say, how are you going? Because I could see his eyes were like, oh my gosh. He goes, it's the worst day of my life. That's how he responded. Of course, he was joking. He's the best person to work with in the world. But it was pretty chaotic being at the beach with all of these dogs. But what was really cool to highlight in Embrace Kids was just how they all move differently. And some are slow and some are fast, and some like to move in packs. Others like to go it alone. Some like the water, some don't. Some are bold and like, here I am world, and some are shy, and they're all beautiful. And then how fun was the animation with the sausage dog trying to round up sheep on a farm? It's not its job. Its job is to catch the rabbit down the hole, and we see what happens when we try to be something other than what we are. And for the sausage dog trying to round up sheep on the farm, it's not a sheepdog, and sheep went everywhere and it was chaos. But then we saw the sheepdog try to catch the rabbit down the hole and it got stuck. Yeah. And I think it was just a beautiful way to say, look at all this diversity. We're all good at different things.
Yeah, and I just love the bigger message that this sends, because often as humans, not dogs, we sort of look at some of the things that we might see in the media, and, as we're moving into adolescence, we start to want to conform, and we start to think that there is one sort of ideal look. And that's something that certainly existed when we were young. But I think what, celebrating diversity and even recognizing this in dogs helps us to then see it in people, communicates there is no right and wrong. There's no right or wrong dog. I mean, I have some opinions on that, but
but we would never shame a dog for being a dog of its breed.
Exactly.
We would never say, poodle dog, you're an idiot. Yeah. Like, why don't you look more like the Rottweiler? Like, we don't do that. We don't judge like that.
We accept them.
We sure do.
Yeah. And so I think what that then tells us is we don't need to compare ourselves and think that someone else is better than us because they're taller or, they look a certain way, because we get this sense that there's not just some idea of what's in or not in or okay or not okay. It's like everyone is great in their own way. And really, when we were growing up, we only really saw one sort of woman in the media. She was white, she was blonde, tall and thin. And this was reinforced so strongly because we only saw this one sort of body shape and size. And we now have much better diversity and representation in the media in terms of skin colour, size, hair colour, the way people look, but also the deeper identities that they represent, which is amazing. But we sort of still then need to reinforce that in the way that we're talking to our kids and in our schools and in all of the other settings that exist. So,
yeah, and I think whilst we have come a long way, we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And when you talk about when we were growing up and we only had that one body ideal to look up to, I cannot tell you how many conversations I had with friends showing them parts of my body or talking about parts of my body. All I was trying to do was to try to normalize. Like, what does yours look like? And am I normal? And look at this and all the things.
Yeah.
That's the danger in just seeing those one types of bodies, is that we automatically think there's something wrong with us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we have the blonde hair. So, we have the skin color and the blonde hair, but then maybe it was about body size, but other people, in all of the people that we talk to then reflect that, if they had darker skin and they didn't see that in any of the magazines, then they would think, am I even beautiful, because it's not represented there.
And that's why in Embrace that we wanted to interview a variety of different people with physical disability, neurodiversity, in a way that amplifies and normalizes their story. And I think from the audiences who have watched Embrace, like our test audience of kids, the feedback has been, it feels so good to be seen. I feel so empowered. I feel like I'm not alone. I feel like I've got more confidence. I feel like I've got other role models to live up to. There's nothing wrong with me. It's so exciting to see that hope in our kids when they see themselves reflected back.
Yeah. And I think it's really, I do have that hope then for the future, because in order for prejudice not to exist, we do need to understand what life is like when you live from a different perspective, so that you can empathize with that, understand that, and then be less judgmental. Yeah. And so we know from some of the research that when we present counter-stereotypical content, particularly around disability and around visible difference, that can then develop empathy and kindness for young people.
Yeah, and I think it gives a deeper understanding to the whole be kind. Because I kind of feel like some of those campaigns just get a little lost, just be kind. But I think that real rich, deep storytelling and vulnerability, and that's what we saw from people in Embrace Kids, is sharing those stories in a way that can be really seen and heard, promotes that real genuine kindness, not just hashtag be kind.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that in making this film, you wanted to include some gender diversity as well. And this is something that, whenever I talk about gender diversity with other adults our age, the main thing they say is like, oh, the kids are all over this. Like, the young people get this already and I'm still getting used to it. And I think it's very similar to this concept of like digital natives is what we called, like the young people who, when they were born, smartphones and internet existed. And so they don't know a world without that. Whereas, I can still remember the dial-up internet sound very clearly. Now, I wonder, I don't know the word for it, but it's like we're going to know these young people who are born in a world where all of this diversity was really normalized, which I love. I love that this is going to happen.
And it reminds me of a conversation I had with Oliver recently, who's my eldest. And I had to explain to him that if you were gay as a child in school, that could have been a really big problem for you. You would have been bullied for it.
God.
And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, to be gay was a really big deal. And he just didn't get the concept.
Wow.
And it was so beautiful that he didn't get it. And we now live in a world where all of this diversity is embraced and celebrated just as it should be.
Yeah. And I'm, glad that I'm doing my okayest shirt here, because sometimes I think when we are getting used to some of these things as adults who are not natives to this new world is, sometimes we mess up pronouns because it's new to us. And I think as long as we're coming from this genuine place of acceptance and learning and trying harder for next time, I think that we can just ask, how would you like me to refer to your gender? And we can, when we mess up, we apologize, we become more aware of it, and we try again. Because there's a piece of research that shows that when adolescents are able to use their new chosen name and their pronouns at school, at home, at work, with friends, the research shows that they have significantly less levels of depression, like 70% less, like a lot. you know? And so it really does make a difference. It's like 34% decrease in suicidal thoughts, 65% decrease in suicide attempts. Like it's a big change.
Yeah, and I've heard adults and grown-ups talking about gender, and there seems to be some resistance. It's almost like the openness that we see in the younger generation. It'd be really nice to take a little bit of that and inject it into us adults and grown-ups. And I think to demonstrate that the point here, Audrey Mason Hyde in Embrace Kids, they said, would it hurt you not to know someone's gender? Because despite how uncomfortable it makes you feel, you assuming my gender makes me feel uncomfortable every day. And all I'm asking is for you to just sit with that little bit of uncomfortable to make somebody else feel better, because it does matter to me.
It was such a powerful part of the film, and I think something that can teach us something as adults and also then help us to maybe talk about that. It sort of gives us that moment to talk about it with our kids if it hasn't already come up in conversation.
And also learn for ourselves. You know, there have been things in my time that I wish that I knew more about, that I felt judged. Or no, it was self-judgment. I thought, gosh, I don't know enough about this subject to talk about it, and I'm scared to talk about something because I haven't educated myself enough. And here's the time. Here is a really good opportunity now where we can think, I don't know a lot about this. And if you don't, there's so much out there to read. There's so many resources. When we don't know something, it's easy just to take ourselves away from the table.
That's really good, because I think, and what I see from our generation of parents is that it was always like the mum is always right or the parents are always right. And there was no room for, you know, this sort of walking side by side to explore things together and learn together, because they always felt like they had to have that authority and the power and to know more than the kids. And I think that's where we're moving as a generation of parents, is to be more alongside the kids in learning some of this stuff rather than always having to be right about it.
Yeah. I love the kids are leading the charge on this one.
Yeah. One of the things that often comes up, you know, when you have really young kids, is that they will see someone who has a physical disability and ask, you know, what is wrong with them? And they'll always say it loudly or like in a way that you don't want them to. But it does bring up that moment for you to then have that conversation and to really put that in a much more positive way. So I think that by showing some of the different range of kids in Embrace Kids, then it almost brings that opportunity before they might say the thing embarrassingly in front of someone at the shopping centre, so that you can have the moment and talk about it and, you know, have their questions come out. Safer space, I guess.
Interviewing Enzo in the film and seeing him talk so positively and so confidently about who he was and his body and how much he loved his body. And what did he say? He said something incredibly funny, like, I'm very handsome.
Yeah. Everyone that's seen the film laughs at that moment, and we all love it.
But what I think, we do. And we just love Enzo. And we're hoping when he started filming, he, as a YouTuber, had 57 followers. And I can't wait till it's 557. It just keeps growing, because we need to hear more from his stories and his wisdom and his positivity. But also, I think the opportunity in hearing a story like Enzo's is when our kids, your kids see Enzo, it's not like, oh, what's wrong with him? Yeah. I think that can be the default, or that's maybe what's happened up until this time in our lives where we've not seen diversity on the screen, or we've not seen it in ad campaigns, and now we are, and now we're normalising it. It's just like, that's just life. Yeah. There's a rich tapestry of human beings and the way we are and the way we arrive on the world, or the way we change in this world. Yeah. So it really empowers that conversation that, this is just Enzo. Here is his story. Thinks he's handsome. And he's funny, and he's a YouTuber.
And a great dancer.
And a great dancer.
Great dancer.
I had to rein that kid in, I'm telling you.
And by having that representation then, like talking about that diversity, seeing all of these different people and all of the amazing things about them, I think that's part of what a lot of advocates have been asking for, is to hear more about just the regular lives of people who look different and to see that on the big screen, so that we can learn more about, you know, the parts of them that don't relate to their disability. The parts of them that are just like, he's a great dancer and this is the music that he likes and he's going to be a YouTuber when he grows up. Not necessarily talking about, a condition or something that's wrong or why they're different. It's about giving kids something that they relate to. We know that when young people see parts of them that they can relate to, like, I like the same music as that person, I like dancing too, then that really helps them to be more accepting of some people who they might initially think that they're quite different to, but they sort of see these common threads in terms of how they're similar and why they could be friends.
We assume if you're here listening to this podcast that you may have read the book, you may have seen the film, you may have done neither. But in terms of what you can do beyond the chat that we've had today, it is watch Embrace Kids film and check out the dogs and have a conversation, with your kids when you are watching it or afterwards, and unpack that more than what we were able to in the film. Something else you can do in your home is with your kids is go to the embracehub.com and you'll find all of the profiles of the kids from the film and you can learn more about them.
Something else that we can do is really start to encourage our kids to recognise what is unique and special about them. And so thinking about what are their strengths, what do they value, what do they like to do, what are your preferences and how are they different to someone else, really starts to develop that sense of identity but also uniqueness. And that's something that, we can sort of keep coming back to throughout because, who knows, they change like from week to week sometimes. So we can just keep doing that, but just reiterating how different they are and how their strengths can sometimes then intersect really nicely with some of the other strengths in a family or in a team or in a classroom.
And overall, by having representation and talking about diversity and seeing all of these things as parts of our identity and valuing that rich and sparkly goodness about ourselves, but also the wonder and interest and strength that all of this diversity brings to the world. It's about being compassionate towards ourselves and others. And also, perhaps we could end on how about some more kindness and less judgment and more representation. And Jamila Jamil really brings this home in the Embrace Kids film. She talks about how we want change and people are starting to speak up and demand it, and we want more representation. And she gives two really good examples. Lizzo. We made Lizzo popular is what she speaks about on the internet, how we booked her at festivals, how we listened to her music. And so she was booked off the back of our demand to see her. And Black Panther, Marvel movie, we wanted more representation and it's exactly what they did. And then we went out and supported that film and it became one of the highest grossing films of all time. Like, it just makes sense. Representation feels good. It feels good to be seen. And Jamila's quote is, we just have to start only approving of the things that make us feel good and of the people who make us feel good. It's pretty simple. It's pretty powerful if we stop and think about it. And I think one of the keys here is that we can all take action on this. We can all do this. If we want to see more diversity on our screens, we can demand it. We're in control here. By following more diverse content creators on social media and listening to their stories and learning from them, it's one of the best ways that we can communicate the fact that we want change and we want to feel seen and we want to feel good about what we do see. So let's make that happen.
For more information, get your hands on our book, Embrace Kids, and for free resources, visit theembracehub.com.